just before we get into Garnacho, it's worth setting a bit of context about Ruben Amorim versus potentially players that are going to dig in their heels. And I think it's worth noting a story that I broke a few years ago now. Islam Slimani, who used to be at Leicester, was a sporting legend. He returned to the club under Ruben Amorim. Amorim didn't want him, wasn't impressed by his attitude, thought he'd come back to kind of just chance it, milk a bit of the glory, play on his own terms and so on. And Amorim really quickly was unhappy with his application in training. So he demoted Slimani to the reserve team, and it caused a lot of outrage in the dressing room, originally in the fan base as well, because Slimani was a sporting legend. He then went to the sporting president and said, it's me or him. And the sporting president said, of course, we're going to back you. And Slimani never played for the football club again. So don't underestimate Ruben Amorim versus a player or players, because he's been given the same sort of mandate from Omar Barada, Jim Ratcliffe and so on, and Jason Wilcox to go and put his foot down. And if Ruben Amorim says to a player, your future at Manchester United is over, then their future at Manchester United is over, as long as he's the manager. I don't think we're going to see players somehow force their way back into the reckoning or outstay their welcome, because there is that empowerment. And that's the sort of irony, that the veto that Ten Hag had in the market has been taken away, but the veto in football decisions has been firmly put on Amorim's shoulders. And if you look at that Slimani situation, you understand that Amorim is not going to be overpowered by anybody turning up to training or doing things via the media. Then coming back to Garnacho, Villa is still one to watch. They want to strengthen on that left-hand side. They've lost, obviously, a few versatile attackers like Rashford and Asensio. There's some suggestions that Asensio has entered into talks with Turkish clubs. And I think Villa want to find a solution to bring in an important left-sided player. Now they're PSR compliant and they're into the new financial year. That may be a possibility. Garnacho would like to stay in the Premier League. Chelsea feels like a non-starter because they've signed Jamie Gittins. Napoli's not advancing in any way, but they do still want to sign a left-sided player. I think Georgi Sudakov at Shakhtar is the other one to watch there. But Garnacho's priority, I'm told, is not to go to Italy, not to go to Turkey, not to go to Saudi. If he can, his first preference is to stay in the Premier League, and Villa remains one to watch.
I think Napoli were looking at Garnacho, but I was talking about Chelsea the other day, and loads of Chelsea fans were saying, we don't want him, we won't go anywhere near him. He's the player that's going to bring the most money in. So let's start with Garnacho. Where do we feel the Garnacho story is going to go? 20 years of age. I think he's a very good talent. I think he's misguided, the Villa shirt on Instagram, etc. But I would have thought there'd be clubs queuing up for a player like him at what's probably going to be a 45 million package, including add-ons and then a significant sell-on fee. I thought there would be more interest.
Yeah, I think there will be as the price drops throughout the window. Manchester United wants 60 million at the moment. That was the same price in January. It could drop to 55. But again, you're looking at all these other attackers, left, right or centre, all going for between 55 and 65. And Manchester United will be ultimately saying what Brentford are speaking about at the moment regarding Mbomo, that we're going to stick to our price as the window progresses. Or if they line up concrete targets and think, well, now we're just going to take the money, different story. And that's a good example of West Ham and Kudos, where they didn't really want to sell to Spurs. They didn't really want to sell for under 60 million, but they got good payment terms. And eventually they say, okay, if we take 55, at least we can get going. And maybe that's the perspective of Manchester United.